A few years ago, I was in my sewing room sorting through a mountain of fabric when I came across a box I didn't recognize. I opened it up, and there inside was a collection of my childhood memories. Old art projects, crafts, report cards. Apparently, I wasn't as good of an elementary school child as I thought I'd been. As I dug through the box, I came across a letter addressed to me, written by my mother well over 30 years ago. Looking at her beautiful penmanship reminded me of her hands. Mama had hands that most women envy. Small and delicate, perfect for wearing rings and fingernail polish, which she did, always pink. Mama had nervous hands. She tapped her fingers more often than not. At the table, in the car, watching a show, on the phone, they tapped. I did not inherit my mother's hands. My hands are wide set, with short fingers that really look more like sausage links than anything. Grandma's hands were much like mine, but Grandma's hands were agile. I believe to this day she could do anything she asked of those hands. I remember watching her fly through the layers of a quilt, dive into a bowl of dough, cut homemade noodles, roll out pie crusts. Grandma could shear a sheep, brand a cow, and crochet like the wind. Her hands were always in motion, but they never tapped. Don't get me wrong, Mama's hands did her fair share of work. With 3 daughters, she had to. As a child, I had very long, thick hair with bangs. Mama wasn't about to pay for a haircut just to trim my bangs when she could do it herself. The problem was, she couldn't. My bangs have these horrific cowlicks, so she would wet them down to cut them. Then they would dry and poof out in front, but crooked. So she'd try again. They would dry crooked the other way. Again and again, she went at those bangs till they eventually ended up sticking out of my head like they'd been chopped off at the knees, which they had. When she was done, I'd run and play. Mama would tap. Cooking brought on the same results. Mama hated cooking, but she had dinner on the table every night and dessert. Daddy had a sweet tooth. We all loved cake night best. No matter what she did or tried, Mama's cakes always fell. But we didn't care. We just called it cake on the outside and brownies in the middle. And no matter how flat the middle was, the frosting was still smooth and level across the top. Mama tapped her fingers while we gorged ourselves on frosting. Sewing was the same. My image of Mama sewing is watching her sit at her machine, picking out a seam, sobbing, then throwing it all in the trash and tapping yet again. For years, I didn't understand the nervous tapping for what it really was. It was just Mama. Later, I did connect the end of the tapping to the beginning of the endless sleeping. What I never questioned, though, was Mama's love for us. No matter how clumsily it was cut or cooked or sewn into my life, it was constant and it was fierce. It was always interesting when Mama's hands and Grandma's came together. You'd think it would be 2 separate universes destined to collide, but it wasn't. There was love and acceptance between this mother and daughter-in-law. I've often compared the worlds of these 2 women. For so long, I envied my mother's hands. But when the time came for my hands to mingle with hers, it was Grandma's that were there for me. My Grandma's hands, short, thick like my own, fastened the long row of buttons down the back of my wedding gown and straightened my veil. So as I sat in my sewing room that day, surrounded by fabric and childhood art, I wasn't surprised at the note from Mama. My dearest Lori, I know we have had a hard time this summer, and I know I've been unbearable. I will try to do better, but please understand that I'm doing the best that I can. Love, Mama. I didn't understand then. I was 20, but I do now. You see, Mama's hands, so beautiful and soft, were the same ones that 6 months after she wrote me that note, wrote our family another note with beautiful penmanship, opened the bottle of pills, took the phone off the hook, and relaxed for the first and the last time. I know it might sound silly, but I know that someday when penmanship, arts and crafts, and bad haircuts don't matter, I will take my mother's hand in mine, my grandma's in the other, and together we will go to a place where all women are whole.